Deep in the money calls have high delta. Delta is the options Greek that measures how much an options price changes per $1 change in the underlying asset's price. Long calls have positive delta because as the stock moves up, so does the premium. So if your in the money call has a 50 delta, the premium is expected to go up by 50 cents for.
Okay. I think there may be a little bit of differentiator between what premium is. Okay. So premium to me represents the extrinsic value. But I guess you could say the whole price is the premium because that's what he's saying right here. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's right. I don't know. But I don't consider the premium to be the intrinsic value. I only personally, like I said, I could be totally wrong, consider the premium to be the extrinsic value.
Every $1 increase in the underlying stock, all things being equal. Deep in the money calls have a higher delta. In my super micro example, the $45 strike call has an 85 delta. That means, all things being equal, your premium will increase by 85 cents for every $1 increase in super micro stock. Essentially, you have an almost stock-like exposure to SMCI's price movement with the leverage offered by call options. And
exactly. This is why we teach this. It has nearly the same movement, let's say 85% of the movement, for 70% less. Isn't this cool?
That's why deep in the money calls can feel like owning a stock, but with more bang for your buck. Options are also more capital efficient than buying stocks outright. You see, each option contract represents 100 shares of an underlying stock, and they cost significantly less to own as well. If you were to buy 100 shares of SMCI today, you'd need to fork over $6,071. But with the $45 strike call, you'd pay $1,810. Well, the premium is $18, and since an option is for 100 shares, it's $18.10 times 100. And if you picked a higher delta, your options value increases nearly as much as the stock. So it's a win-win situation. And if that's not enough, you also get downside protection as well. With long calls, the maximum loss.
This is great too, right? Remember, when you buy a stock, the loss on that stock is basically going to zero. Now, SoFi could never, ever, possibly ever go to zero, even though it's at $20 right now. There's no possible way that SoFi could, in fact, go to zero. I'm just saying, not possible. Okay, greatest stock in the history of mankind. But let's say, in theory, you have unlimited losses down to $20. But let's say you went with like a 80 delta deep in the money call. Your losses are limited to $3.45 in this example, right? Significantly less risk, significantly less. So if SoFi suffered a catastrophic event, which, I mean, let's look at the price of SoFi. I mean, let's be realistic here, right? Where's SoFi? Here. I mean, just buy the dip, okay? Just buy the dip. It only goes up. Just so everybody knows, I'm being sarcastic. Let's say that SoFi suffered a catastrophic loss of $10 a share, which it totally has done in the last 60 days, right? Let's say that it suffers a catastrophic loss of another $10 a share. You, as the options buyer, during the time that you own it, okay, you as the stock buyer would lose 50% of your value. You, as the options buyer, you're only going to lose $3.45. I mean, if you did not sell out of it, which is obviously like 2/3 less risk than owning the stock outright. So easy.
Is the premium paid to enter the position in the first place. So even if SMCI goes down to zero at expiration, you'll only lose $1,810, and compare that to owning the shares outright, which means your loss could be much bigger.
Yeah, and Linda says, yeah, so if it dropped 50% in this SMCI example, you would lose $1,810, which is exactly what he just said. But if you bought the stock outright, you'd lose $3,000.
The next advantage of owning deep in the money calls is that they have less theta decay. Theta is an options creator.
Less theta decay? Man, I love this video so I could do a whole video just on this video. It's like we're doing that right now.
That tracks how much extrinsic value an option loses as it gets closer to expiration. Since deep in the money calls have less extrinsic value than out of the money calls, you're less exposed to theta or time decay.
Exactly. And now this is where Chris loves the deep in the money calls. And one of the reasons why, when I look to put on a trade, and my trading plan linked down below, this is included in that trading plan. I want to find a strike that has roughly 20% of extrinsic value to the ask price. So let's try and find one of those right now. So generally around the 80 delta. So 60 cents divided by the ask price, 345, gets me 17%. So the most extrinsic value, the most theta decay at this exact moment is only 17%. That goes back to this right here. 17% of this will decay over time versus 100% of the out of the money one. Both of them go to zero at the same time, but mine goes significantly less per day versus the out of the monies. So cool. So cool. I love this.
Reduced exposure to theta means that deep in the money calls hold their value more consistently over time, especially if the stock price remains stable or trends upward. And this makes them ideal for longer term bullish strategies such as leaps, where you want to get meaningful exposure to a stock's movement.
Now, Lucky Chevy actually has a really, really good point. A really good point. Position sizing, right? So if you plan to do 100 shares and then you went over and you did the equivalent, let's say it's one option contract for 1810, that is an equivalent trade. Okay. But if you want to do 100 shares at $6,000, you're like, well, that's fine. I'll just buy $6,000 of options, right? That would mean you'd buy 3. So you now wouldn't have 100 deltas like the original plan. You'd have 300 deltas. So yes, it is the same out-of-pocket cost, but now you have 3 times the risk. Now you have 3 times the position. Well, that's great, Chris. Now I have 3 times the gains. You also have 3 times the risk, right? So if you had not planned on a 300 delta risk, but only a 100 delta risk, you can't go out and buy the $6,000 worth of stock in this case. That's a great point, Lucky Chevy. Thank you for mentioning that.
For, let's say, a year or more without consistently battling time decay. Bottom line, you're paying for reliability rather than speculation. All right, so using Supermicro again, let's look for leaps trades by just changing the expiration date in the dropdown. As you can see, available expiration dates go.
Now, I personally don't like leaps, and I'll show you why. If my average trade, in fact, let's pop into Outlier, right? Let's go to the SPY. The SPY got a buy signal today, as of the day we're recording this, right? And you can spend hours looking at charts, or you can just use Outlier, and it'll show you everything you need right here. So I want to look at the performance summary, instant back test, right? So looking at this, we can see Outlier at 120% versus buy and hold at 117%. Well, that's not much different. I might as well just buy and hold. The thing with buy and hold is that you're throwing a dart and you're holding the dart there for 5 years and hoping that it works out. That's what the back test covers. Versus having a plan to get in and out. And that plan to get in and out got you roughly the same returns as throwing a dart. Okay. But let's think about the capital efficiency here. You're only in the market 66% of the time. So the other 34% of the time, you can do anything you want. Okay. Which makes your capital efficiency, how much you would earn per day, 1.5x had you just held it with the market. So you're making 1.5 times as much as you would per day if you had just bought and hold. Pretty cool, right? Anyways, where I was going with that was the average holding period. For me, in my trades, is roughly 18 days. In fact, on the back tested part of the plan, not just what's inside of Outlier, but in the back tested plan M, the average holding period is 17.46. Okay. So I don't need a leap option, and leap options are generally, in my opinion, 90 days or more, right? There could be different opinions, but 90 days or more, right? So let's say that I went with an 80 delta call in SoFi at, let's go 23 days. I generally like to start at 21 days because that's a little bit longer than my average trade. Now, not a lot of open interest here, but just for our example, let's say that I purchased it for $4.90. So let's round it up to $5. Now let's look at 90 days out, 80 delta call. 90 days out, 80 delta call would cost me $6. So it cost me, a good 20% more, to go further out in time. But I don't need all that time. Or maybe even 191 days. The 80 delta call, 770. I don't need all that time. If my average trade, and of course, this is all backed by data, by a team of over 20 PhDs, actuaries, data scientists, and rocket scientists and math nerds, that's what I like to say, that helped us build this plan. If my average holding period is 17 days, I'm just paying for time. I'm paying more for time. That's all. And I don't want to pay more for time. In fact, I want to pay as little as possible. That way I can get more trades on.